Doo-doo-dee. It's Nandi!
Hello friends, I'm continuing my series on campaign events, this time covering the Space Hulk themed campaign event where the Adepta Sororitas and Black Templars fight against the Death Guard. It uses the new door mechanic, which reveals new enemies as you step into each room. For the campaign characters this time, I have used the core characters, Roswitha, Vindicta, and Isabella. When we have needed a fourth or fifth character, I have opted for the most commonly owned Black Templar characters, Godswill and Burchard. In terms of abilities, on screen is a rough idea of what you'll need in order to complete the standard section of this campaign. A quick shout out to Pi, who has been invaluable in putting this together. His referral code is on screen as a thank you. A few quick things to point out as tips and general advice. Firstly, Poxwalkers are not daemons, just mutated humans, so they won't take any extra damage from Roswitha's active. If you use Godswill's active against an enemy without a free hex behind them, they will take an additional 20% health as direct damage. You can use Vindicta's active while in melee. She will still do her ranged passive AoE, but she won't damage herself. You can build up active faith with the Templar units to let your sisters land big hits and crits on Plague Marines and Blightlord Terminators. People have requested that I point out the trickier stages, also known as token traps, so I've highlighted them here on screen. Feel free to pause or take notes. For this video, I used pauldrons for all of the characters, and that is relevant because if your character has different armor thresholds, enemy AI behavior might be different. Secondly, Nurglings are a new NPC we fight in this campaign. I've spoken about them before in my patch video if you're interested in more information. Common 1 requires no particular strategy. The enemies are weak, so just kill them. For Common 2, use Isabella to open the door, and then Vindicta's active and normal attack should kill the bulk of the enemies. Clean up on turn 2. For Common 3, we start with Isabella killing an enemy, following up with Godswill and Roswitha to finish the other. The next turn, Isabella opens the door, and we slowly work our way through the enemies in this room. Nothing too tricky. For 3B, this is a mission where you need good crits to succeed. On turn 1, Godswill, Burchard, and Vindicta target the Plague Marines in the top left room, and Vindicta uses her active. Isabella and Roswitha mosey up north. On turn 2, Godswill kills the bottom right Plague Marine and opens the door. Isabella moves towards Burchard and Vindicta and heals herself, and Roswitha joins her. On turn 3, Isabella heals Vindicta and the other characters move up as shown. Vindicta targets a Plague Marine. On turn 4, use Isabella's active and continue to use the sisters to target the Plague Marines on the right, and Godswill and Burchard killing off the Plague Marine on the left. For Common 4, Isabella opens the door and Vindicta kills 2 enemies and the rest of the squad filters through. Try not to attack with Vindicta on the next turn, even if that means you leave an enemy alive, as her flame hexes will impede movement towards the third and final room. Group up before you open the final door, and Vindicta's active should do the bulk of the damage to the remaining enemies. For Common 5, Godswill and Isabella kill the bottom right Plague Marine, and Isabella and Roswitha almost kill the northern one in turn 1. On turn 2, Vindicta moves south and uses her active. Alongside Roswitha, that lets you clear the room, and then Isabella opens the door for Godswill to start work on the next room. That should set you up for a lightning victory on the next turn as shown. For mission 6, on turn 1, move Burchard up to open the door and attack the Plague Marine alongside Godswill. Vindicta uses her active on the Plague Marines in the bottom left, move Roswitha and Isabella up. On turn 2, Vindicta finishes off the Plague Marines in the bottom room, and the remaining characters target Maladus and the Plague Marines in the top room, with Isabella healing a character. On turn 3 and 4, keep whittling away and try to finish Maladus with Roswitha's active. For Common 7, we meet the Nurglings for the first time. The Nurglings in the starting room are in deep strike, so Isabella opens the door for Vindicta to kill a swarm in the next room. Roswitha and Burchard make a shell around Isabella. On turn 2, we continue to advance into the next room, and then Burchard uses his active, with blast damage, to kill the swarms. Isabella and Roswitha attack the final Nurgling swarm in the first room. From there, Burchard's normal attack and Vindicta's active kills the final enemies. For Common 8, we slowly work our way into the northwest room. The Plague Marines and Nurglings in this room can swap spawn points with each other, but either way they funnel into the door for Vindicta to shoot down on the final turn. Nothing too tricky here. For Common 9, the trick is to open all of the doors on turn 1, and you can use Godswill's active to move the enemy out of the doorway. This lets all the enemies come to you for an easier finish. We leave the sisters in the starting room to deal with the Nurglings, and Godswill holds the northern doorway against the Plague Marines until backup arrives. For Common 10, each room contains the same type and number of enemies, but they spawn in different locations each time. On turn 1, open both rooms with Isabella and Roswitha. Use the remaining 2 characters to clear out the top left room, while the enemies from the south move toward us. On turn 2, the sisters change attention to the south room. Godswill stays to finish off the Plague Marines. Cleanup from there should be fairly straightforward. Mission 11 is against Pestilin. We turtle in the bottom right to start and attack the Plague Marine on the right with Roswitha. On turn 2, attack the Plague Marine on the left with Godswill and finish them off with Roswitha. Attack the Nurglings in the middle with Vindicta and move Burchard up next to her. Use Burchard's active to finish off the Nurglings and damage the Marine on the right. Heal with Isabella. On turns 3 and 4, we use our forces to whittle down the Plague Marines in the middle as shown. There's nothing too complex about this turn sequence, but I'll leave it on screen for you to watch. We encounter Poxwalkers on mission 12. Move Isabella forward to open the door. Roswitha attacks the Poxwalker on the right, Vindicta moves to the left of Isabella. On turn 2, attack the first enemy with Roswitha and move Isabella up to kill the other. On turn 3, use Roswitha to open the door, Vindicta moves into the next room and kills the Poxwalker to the south. On turn 4, we simply clean up. Mission 13 has more Poxwalkers. Isabella moves south and kills the Poxwalker on the right, Roswitha kills the other. Vindicta opens the door and Godswill follows behind. On turn 2, Roswitha moves forward and kills the closest Poxwalker. Godswill attacks the next 2 Poxwalkers. Vindicta moves south and finishes off the remaining enemies. 13B isn't too tricky. We build Act of Faith stacks for Vindicta and she attacks enemies in the hallway. Note that the bottom left room is empty. Start by using Burchard's active on the Plague Marines. God's Will heads up into the top right room to target the Poxwalkers. The other characters move up near God's Will. For turn 2, Burchard attacks the Nurglings. Vindicta uses her active on the enemies to the south. God's Will attacks the Plague Marines and Roswitha is healed by Isabella. Roswitha then kills the Plague Marine in the top left room. Clean up on turn 3. For 14, Burchard finishes off the Poxwalkers on the right. Roswitha opens the door and God's Will moves forward to attack the Plague Marine on the right. Isabella and Vindicta move up as shown. On turn 2, move God's Will up to the left and attack the Poxwalker and Plague Marine on the left. Move Isabella up and use her heal on herself. Move Vindicta next to Isabella and finish off the Poxwalker and Plague Marine. Move Roswitha up and kill the Poxwalker off on the right. Burchard follows up at the back. On turn 3, God's Will attacks the Northern Plague Marine followed by Vindicta. Isabella heals Roswitha, and then Roswitha attacks the Plague Marine. For turn 4, God's Will moves north and attacks the remaining Plague Marine. Roswitha finishes him off. 15 is the same team. The second room's spawn points change, and you need to get good crits to get a lightning victory. God's Will moves to the door and attacks the Plague Marine alongside Burchard. The other characters turtle together. On turn 2, Roswitha uses her active on the Nurgling to the east. Burchard uses his active on the characters in the doorway. Vindicta uses her active on the characters in room 2. Continue attacking with Roswitha and God's Will until enemies are cleared in this room. For 16, the spawn points in the room can vary. Don't worry about the second door as the third room is empty. Move Isabella forward and kill the closest Poxwalker. Vindicta moves forward and attacks the Poxwalker on the right, and her AoE finishes off the remaining enemies. God's Will opens the trapdoor, and the other characters move forward as shown. On turn 2, Burchard and Roswitha range attack the Nurglings. God's Will steps back, and Vindicta attacks the Plague Marine to the north. On turn 3, Burchard uses his active on the Nurgling and Plague Marine. The Vindicta attacks the Northern Plague Marine, and God's Will uses his active to attack the same Marine. From there, it's just cleanup. For 17, watch out for Carodius and his summons, which usually one-shot one of the sisters. The key is to try and keep clear until he summons. On turn 1, Roswitha and Vindicta attack the Poxwalkers to the southeast and northeast, respectively. Isabella attacks the Poxwalker directly to the south. Burchard attacks the Poxwalkers to the southwest. God's Will moves next to Vindicta and Roswitha. On turn 2, target the summons near Carodius with Vindicta. Roswitha uses her active on the Nurglings to the east. Burchard uses his active on the Nurglings to the south. Isabella joins in on the attack. From there, the main enemy to kill is Carodius, and you can get your characters to gang up on him. For 18, Roswitha moves to the right to open the door. Vindicta uses her active on the Terminator, killing the Poxwalker next to him. God's Will then uses his active on the Terminator as well. Isabella opens the door to the north and Burchard attacks the closest Poxwalker. On turn 2, Burchard uses his active on the Poxwalkers. Isabella finishes off the remaining Poxwalker. Vindicta and Roswitha kill the Terminator and God's Will attacks a Poxwalker in the north. Clean up on turn 3. For mission 19, there is a lot of variability in where enemies spawn. Burchard moves down to open the door to the west. Roswitha moves in and attacks a Plague Marine. Isabella opens the door to the north. God's Will moves into the next room and uses his active on the Terminator. Vindicta moves in behind Isabella. On turn 2, God's Will kills the Terminator. Isabella heals God's Will. Vindicta uses her active on the Plague Marines, and Roswitha and Burchard kill off a Plague Marine. For turn 3, God's Will kills a Plague Marine. Isabella and Vindicta both attack a Terminator. Roswitha attacks the Plague Marine in the southwestern room and Burchard kills him off. On turn 4, Isabella moves out of the way for Vindicta and God's Will to finish the Terminator and end the battle. For mission 20, Vindicta moves forward and attacks the closest Poxwalkers. Roswitha kills the last Poxwalker remaining. Isabella moves south to open the door. On turn 2, Isabella moves out of the way and heals herself. Vindicta kills the Poxwalkers in the doorway. Roswitha moves left. On turn 3, Vindicta opens the door and Roswitha moves forward to attack the Poxwalkers on the right. On turn 4, Roswitha moves out of the way and Vindicta kills off the remaining enemies. On mission 21, Burchard moves south and uses his active on the Poxwalkers on the right. Roswitha and Godswill attack the Terminator. Vindicta attacks the Plague Marines to the southeast. On turn 2, Godswill attacks the Plague Marine on the left, Isabella heals herself, and Vindicta uses her active on Maladus. Roswitha attacks the Plague Marine on the left. Burchard moves as shown and attacks the Plague Marine to the south. On turn 3, we clean up. For mission 22, we fight against Typhus. Burchard moves forward and uses his active to attack the surrounding Poxwalkers. Roswitha moves up and kills the Poxwalker on the right. The remaining characters turtle together. On turn 2, Vindicta attacks the Nurglings. Burchard moves down and kills the Nurglings to the southwest. Isabella finishes off the Nurglings on the right. Roswitha kills the nearest Poxwalker, and again the characters turtle together. On turn 3, Vindicta and Burchard move to the left, with Isabella following behind. She heals Godswill. Burchard attacks the Plague Marine and Typhus. We can use Vindicta's active to attack Typhus. Godswill also moves up and attacks Typhus. Roswitha attacks the Plague Marine on the right. Turn 4 is once again cleanup. For 23, Isabella opens the door and Burchard attacks the Poxwalker as shown. The other characters turtle in behind. On turn 2, Vindicta kills the Poxwalkers to the southeast and Roswitha kills the Nurglings to the south. Burchard uses his active as shown and Godswill and Isabella move ahead. We tidy up on turn 3. For mission 24, you will need some good crits to get the lightning victory. On turn 1, Godswill uses his active to push a Plague Marine onto the door trap. Burchard kills off the nearest guardsman. Roswitha and Vindicta move up and Isabella opens the door to the left. On turn 2, try and use Roswitha's active on the Nurglings in the doorway, with Burchard following up with his active. Isabella also moves up. Godswill attacks the Plague Marine on the right and Vindicta finishes him off with her active. Tidy up the remaining Plague Marines on the rest of your turns. Again for 25 you will need some good crits. Start with Isabella opening the door and all 3 characters attacking the Plague Marine. On turn 2, Vindicta uses her active on the Nurglings to the south. Isabella kills the Plague Marine by the door. Roswitha uses her active on the Nurglings in the doorway to the top right room. On the remaining turns, the sisters target the remaining Nurglings and Isabella kills the remaining Plague Marine. For 25B, the main strategy is to guide the enemies onto the ice and let Vindicta warm them up. On turn 1, Vindicta moves as shown and targets the Plague Marine to the southwest and Burchard joins the attack. Godswill targets the Plague Marine in the middle and Roswitha moves over to finish him off. On turn 2, Burchard uses his active on the Nurglings. Vindicta uses her active on the Plague Marines. Godswill uses his active on Carudius. Roswitha also uses her active and Isabella heals herself. On turn 3, Roswitha and Burchard kill off the Plague Marine to the south. Isabella moves south and resurrects Godswill. Vindicta targets the enemies to the north. On turn 4, Isabella heals Godswill. He attacks Malodus alongside Burchard. Roswitha kills him off. Vindicta continues to target the enemies to the north. Tidy up on turn 5. For 26, Vindicta moves forward and kills a Poxwalker. Roswitha attacks the Plague Marine, and Isabella kills a Poxwalker. On turn 2, Isabella opens the door and heals herself. Vindicta attacks the Nurglings and Roswitha attacks the Plague Marine. On turn 3, Roswitha kills the Nurglings and once again Isabella moves out of the way and heals herself before Vindicta's area of effect attack on the Plague Marine. Turns 4 and 5 are fairly straightforward. I'm showing them here on screen. Essentially, just keep your characters alive and finish the battle. For mission 27, the bottom left room is empty, which means you can ignore it. On turn 1, Burchard and Vindicta move down to target the 2 closest Plague Marines. Isabella opens the door, and Roswitha and Godswill move down to join Vindicta and Burchard. Godswill attacks 2 Plague Marines and kills 1 off. On turn 2, Vindicta moves down and uses her active on the Plague Marines on the left. Roswitha joins the fight. Isabella moves down and heals herself. Burchard and Godswill use their actives. For turn 3, Vindicta moves down to kill the Plague Marine to the south, and Isabella heals herself. Burchard and Roswitha kill the remaining Plague Marine. Clean up on turn 4. I don't think this mission is possible without a few lucky crits. On turn 1, Godswill and Isabella move down, targeting the Terminator near the door. The other characters move to the right to target the enemy in the top right room. On turn 2, Isabella moves to join the character on the right and uses her heal. Godswill attacks the enemies on the left, and the other characters target the enemy on the right. On turn 3, all of our squad moves to the top right room to finish off the Terminator. Burchard does a ranged attack on the Terminator in the top left room. On turn 4, Vindicta uses her active and the other characters chip away at the remaining enemies. "29 is very difficult without legendary characters or Brother Jaeger. Once more, you will need some lucky crits. The spawns in the bottom right room can vary. The main strategy is to build up crits with Roswitha and Isabella to clear the second group of Plague Marines. Move Godswill and Burchard forward to attack Malodus. The other characters move in behind. On turn 2, Roswitha targets the Nurglings to the south with her active. Burchard uses his active on Malodus and the Nurglings in the top left room. Vindicta uses her active on the Plague Marine, and Godswill finishes off Malodus. For next turn, put Godswill and Burchard at the front of the pack. For turn 4, step back as to not block the doorway, and use Isabella and Roswitha as previously mentioned to finish up. For the final stage, we fight against Mortarion. When Mortarion gets to half health, which is around 4000 HP, he will leave the battle. Be careful, as his Arch Contaminator ability will one-shot any of our characters who start a turn in melee. For turn 1, the characters move forward and target Poxwalkers as shown. On turn 2, Godswill moves up and kills the Poxwalker to the north. The other characters avoid the Plague Wind ability and attack Mortarion. On turn 3, Roswitha moves north and uses her active on Mortarion. Burchard moves to the north and Isabella to the south. Godswill finishes off the Poxwalker. Vindicta uses her active on Mortarion. We continue to attack Mortarion and move out of the way of his Plague Wind. We can use Isabella to resurrect a killed character. Godswill keeps cleaning up Poxwalkers, and we keep attacking Mortarion until he flees the fight. Okay, that's all she wrote. Thanks as always to my Patreons and Mrs. Nandi for their support. Bye for now.